Hello everyone, I'm Jake Steinberg, a writer and story consultant, and I've been playing Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door for the first time, thanks to the remaster on Nintendo Switch. Now, to be totally honest, I set out to play this game because I wanted to know if it was actually as good as everyone had always told me. And now, having completed it, oh baby. So there's one thing in particular that I think this game does better than most video games I've ever played. But before we get to that, and just to speak about the title more broadly, a lot of the classic elements that I think we look for in good video games are really strong in Thousand Year Door. The story features a classic globe-trotting adventure reminiscent of Dragon Quest titles. It's very orthodox RPG in this way. You go to a new town, you interact with the local community, and help them solve whatever problem they are locally facing. Thousand Year Door succeeds at each chapter being visually distinct, but also, and I think more importantly, distinct and unique in its pacing. So not only do the chapters look different, but they play different. They ask different things of the player. Chapter 3, for example, features a wrestling tournament in the flashy city of Glitzville and boisterous, larger-than-life personalities. But in its pacing, Chapter 3 is the most battle-heavy. Now, Chapter 6, on the other hand, takes place entirely on a moving train and is the most, talky section of the game, at times playing like a visual novel. I think these two chapters really well represent separate ends of the spectrum, and they show how each chapter is able to derive sentiment and particularity by their structure and style being different for the player. And, the whole time I was streaming this game, my chat would constantly tell me, oh, this chapter's my favorite, that chapter's my favorite, and I was always surprised by how much variance there was. There wasn't everybody agrees that this is the best chapter. And I think that's because the chapters in this game understand that to make something unique and memorable and special, you can't just change their aesthetics. You need to change the player's experience of what it looks like to actually engage with the chapter. And that's why each section of the game adopts a different balance of storytelling, puzzle solving, and combat. And that's why each chapter will speak to and be like the most favorite or the most memorable for different people. Different people enjoy different things. So to speak a little bit about the combat, I really like how the battle system shakes out here. It's a turn-based RPG with the kind of normal and special move options that you might expect, and you've got this fun button timing, quick time event-esque system on top to keep you from going on autopilot too much. Now, every time you level up, you can choose to upgrade your health, your special meter, or your badge points. The first two systems, I think, are self-explanatory, while the third option, badge points, is a flexible resource that governs how many unique abilities and perks you can equip at one time. What this all amounts to is a battle system that provides enough options for hardcore players that they feel empowered and rewarded for studying it, while still providing intuitive paths for the casual or beginner players so that they can easily find success. I would never call this system deep, but I think it gives a strong enough illusion of depth to make it fun to throw builds together without ever creating an irritating amount of friction, because the game wants you to be successful in its battles. It wants you to keep going through the game at a steady pace. Now, hardcore players can create a build that makes them feel like a genius, and that will break the game a bit, But the casual player can still bulldoze the entire thing as long as they are just leveling up. And I actually think that the button timing element of all this supports my argument, because there are times when you're supposed to press A to block, so, you press A to get a little bit more damage, but then there's an extra thing where you can press B to do a parry with a really, really small window of success. And then there's the secret second A button press that you can do to accumulate the resource you need to do your strongest attacks. And you don't need any of that stuff. It's just there. It's there for those that want to have that element of a game like this occupy their minds as they're playing it. Okay, Okay, now let's get into the element I was alluding to earlier. So there's one thing that I think makes this game, more than talking about how good it is, I think there's something that makes this game special. And it's that Paper Mario understands how to deploy NPCs for high impact. Good NPCs. I think going into Thousand Year Door, before I played this game, I had obviously heard about it. And one of the biggest known quantities for me was that people really liked the unique characters, the unique character designs in this game. And I know that, like, in the fandom, it's a big thing. It's a big talking point that future iterations in this franchise maybe, like, wouldn't have these specific designs. They would use like generic Toads and Goombas as opposed to, I don't know, Professor Frankly, the god. So I do want to start off just by saying that I don't think what makes the NPCs good are their unique designs. I don't think that is the root. I think that the unique designs are a symptom of what actually makes them so successful. First, I need everybody to consider the following. Okay, let's set a baseline here. In RPGs, I have a very specific relationship with NPCs. And I'm not talking about party members. I'm not talking about companions. I'm talking about the barely unique, no thoughts, all vibes guys that you see hanging out in towns and outside of important landmarks. I go up to this NPC. I see whatever boring, barely relevant blurb it was assigned, and I move on, never thinking about that character again. Some would argue that these characters are here for world building or to add flavor and charm. And I would say that in a lot of games, it seems like they are there because it would be weirder if the town was empty. Like they are game design elements rather than storytelling tools. They are there for the same reason that a tree or a lamppost is there in the environment. It's just to fill up the container. Now in Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, I think that NPCs lend themselves to a scaffolding style of storytelling that fills me with this active sense, this active curiosity about the narrative potential at play. Let me break this down. Take a look at the Bob family, consisting of Gold Bob, Sylvia, and Bub. When you encounter these three for the first time, they're chilling outside the Glitz pit in Glitzville, and they say something about being on vacation. The game wants you to know that they are rich and that they are a family. Sure, not too dissimilar from the kind of NPC that I was describing earlier. Now, it is cool that as Mario's renown grows in Glitzville, the Bomb family reacts differently to him. But what's really cool is what happens later. You see the Bomb family again, this time aboard the XS Express on their ride home to Poshley Heights. This fits their character, sure, but then there's an entire quest in the game centered around figuring out what the parents should get Bub for his birthday. And what's great is when you're on the train, you think you've seen it. You think you've seen the setup and the payoff. We set them up in Glitzville. We show that this is a thing that exists, and then we pay them off on the train. We deploy the NPCs earlier so that we can pay them off in the future. And that is cool. And it definitely makes them more memorable and impactful. But then, later in the game, there's another whole quest involving Gold Bob that relies on your ability to have recognized the family and guess where they might be at that moment in the game. And it's not that these details, it's not that the sequencing makes the world feel living and breathing. I don't believe that the Bomb family is out there doing stuff while I'm playing the game. But what this actually does, what this actually achieves, is it makes me believe, it makes me buy into the idea that the NPCs in this game are intentional. They are purposeful. They are specifically chosen to achieve these setups and payoffs. It's worth it for me to talk to the NPCs in this game because they very well could be deployed again in the future. They're not just set dressing. And because everything is so purposeful, this structure actually invigorates my playthrough with a sense of logic. It makes me empowered to think that I can figure out what the story is setting up and where we are going. So like I streamed this entire game. I streamed the whole thing on this YouTube channel, and my chat knows I would constantly stop playing the game just to hypothesize about what I thought we were doing, where we were going next. And the game is so logical in its scaffolding that, like, this Rumpelstiltskin-esque ghost character shows up. He asks me to guess his name, and I feel empowered enough to pull up a Google Doc and start drafting ideas because I think I could brainstorm it. I think that this game is so stacked in a particular way, storytelling-wise, that if I think hard enough, if I get myself in the right setting, I can figure out this guy's name. And did I know? But I was empowered to think that I could. Because if I believe that every element at play here is purposeful, all of these NPCs are serving a role, then surely I can see what is scaffolding. And if I can see what is scaffolding, then I can, reason out the end result, right? And that's just fun. All that stuff is just fun. And I think that this storytelling structure is why these characters need to be stylized, why these characters need to be unique. It's important to see the character over and over again and recognize them and follow their journey. Whereas a lot of NPCs, the kind I was talking about earlier, they don't function this way. They might as well just be generic, and that's why they are. The game doesn't want you to recognize the same guy over and over again, so it makes them all look the same, so you just don't even, they're a lamppost. And I feel compelled in a video like this not to spoil like the entire ending of the game, but I will say that the finale, that final act, I think understands where the strength and the power and the storytelling part of this game really is. Because when it gets to the end of the story, when we're screaming and beaming like a Marvel movie, the thing that ends up saving the day, the power that is derived in this story, is not some like made up, trumped up, love connection between Mario and Peach. And instead, it places the power on all of these different NPCs and all of these different communities that you have become entangled with as you have played the game. The game, in its final moments, in those moments of transcendence, recognizes, no, this is the thing that we've been doing the whole time. And I think that's really great. So in closing, I just want to say that storytelling is not a moment. It is a movement. A character isn't memorable because of its design. It's memorable because of how it is deployed, its setup, and its payoff. There is no single screenshot that I could show you for why I love Professor Frankly and Pennington so much, and why they're my favorite NPCs in the game. And it's because what I really love about them is how they move and how they are moved by the story. So with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for listening to all of this. If you are interested, as I mentioned before, my entire playthrough of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is available to watch the VODs on this channel right now. And soon we will be streaming again, doing some of that post-game content. So if you're interested in that, I hope to see you in the chat. Thanks again. Goodbye.